Welcome back to the Moto Chiba YouTube channel, and thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and come back often to check out new videos. I took advantage of the Indian Motorcycles demo truck visiting my closest dealership, Indian of Fredericksburg in Virginia, to ride 6 of their motorcycles, 3 on Friday and 3 on Saturday. I rode 2 different Challengers, a Dark Horse and a Limited. I rode 2 different Scout Bobbers, a regular bobber and a bobber 20, and I rode 2 Chieftain Limiteds, one with a mid-rise handlebar and one with a standard handlebar. Other than the bobber 20, I think all the bikes were stock and didn't have any engine modifications or anything like that. The bobber 20 didn't have an engine modification, it had an exhaust modification, and I don't think it raised the power of the bike appreciably. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Chieftains that I rode, and I'm here in this one riding the Chieftain Limited in a color scheme called Thunder Black with graphics. That's the name of it, Thunder Black with graphics. The graphics are nice pinstriping on the fairing, tank, fender, side panels, and saddlebags, but the color scheme pushes the price up to $29,250. Stock, the Chieftain Limited in plain old Thunder Black costs $28,000. You can get it in Radar Blue for an additional $750 with the graphics like I said a second ago, or in a couple of Icon paint schemes for $29,750. Just an astronomical amount of money for a motorcycle. Right now, their Icon colors are Dragon Green, which I do not like at all, and Burnt Orange Metallic, which looks really good and not at all like rust or even a pumpkin. It's a really nice, calm orange color. Very, very cool. They have a Chieftain Dark Horse model for $28,000, or you can get the Chieftain Classic for $26,000 and a base model Chieftain for $22,000. If none of those tickle your fancy, you can shell out about $35,000 for a hand-painted Chieftain Elite. Now, Indian is in a bit of a transitional period with the Chieftains in that you can get them in 2 different engine displacements right now. I don't know how much longer that's going to last, but right now you can. The Chieftain Classic comes only with their 111 cubic inch engine. That's 1,819 cubic centimeters for you metric folks out there. You can also get that engine on the basic Thunder Black Chieftain. The differences between the Chieftain and the Chieftain Classic are fairly simple. The Chieftain Classic is the bike that Indian started offering in 2014 when Polaris relaunched the brand. It's got that classic old-fashioned look people probably picture in their mind when they think of a vintage Indian motorcycle. It's very round, it has the big valenced front fender and a big fork-mounted fairing that sports a headlight and 2 aux lights and a bunch of chrome and extra lights and all that stuff. It's got the classic headdress light-up icon on the front fender, and it's the first Indian motorcycle I ever rode and fell for. The reason I gravitated towards the Scout was because I figured I'd never be able to afford a Chieftain, and that may still be true since a Chieftain Classic would set me back at least $26,000. A couple of years ago, Indian updated the look of the Chieftain, making it more angular and more modern. A lot of folks heaped criticism on Indian for the redesign, saying they were copping out by making the Chieftain look more like its competitor's bike, specifically bikes in the same segment, the bagger segment from Harley-Davidson. I didn't care too much because they kept the one I liked, even though they changed its name to Classic. And of course, there's always the used market, so maybe someday I'll get one. For 2020, Indian is updating their traditional air oil-cooled engine, bumping its displacement from 111 to 116 CI, or a whopping 1,900 cc's. A Chieftain with the 111 will cost you $22,000, but the one with the 116 costs $24,000, and they're different colors. The 111 is basic black. The 116, the base model with this 116 is kind of a silvery matte color. I forget what they call it. Now, the 116 engine is the one that they're using across the rest of the Chieftain line, so you really have to work hard to get one with a 111 in it. I expect when Indian decides to retire the 111, they will also retire the Chieftain Classic, which is disappointing, and that's probably best discussed in another video. What I rode, like I said, is the Chieftain Limited in Thunder Black with graphics. The graphics are nice, the pinstriping is well done, and I can't even tell if they're done by machine or by hand, which says a lot either way, whether Indian's using machines or people to paint the pinstripes. They had two of them on hand, one with a mid-rise handlebar and one with a standard handlebar. Everything else about the two bikes was the same. In addition to the 116 engine, they have a 6-speed transmission and a regular plain old wet clutch actuated by a cable. Unlike the Challenger, the Chieftains don't get the assist clutch, and while clutch lever feel was a little bit stiffer, it was by no means uncomfortable or difficult in any way, shape, or form. If there's one thing Indian is doing really well, it's their clutches, and that applies across the whole line of the bikes as far as I'm concerned. Indian claims the 116 puts out 126 foot-pounds of torque at 2,900 RPM, but they don't list a horsepower rating anywhere on their site. I found a video elsewhere on YouTube showing dyno runs from a 2019 Chieftain Limited. Check the description for the link to that. And it showed the bike putting out about 71 horsepower on the dyno in all three riding modes. My bet would be Indian would post crank horsepower rather than horsepower at the tire, and they would probably claim somewhere between 80 and 85 horsepower. That's basically the same torque rating as the Challenger, but the Chieftain's engine hits its peak about 1,000 RPM lower than the Challenger, and of course, my estimate of 80 horsepower at the crank is 65% of what Indian claims for the Challenger. So no doubt at the crank, they use that value at the crank because that value is always higher and looks better in marketing materials. The Challenger and the Chieftain share some of their specs. They both have a wheelbase of 65.7 inches, and they use the same size tires, 19 by 3.5 in the front and a 16 by 5 in the rear, as well as the same tire sizes. The Challenger comes stock with Metzeler Cruise Tech tires, while the Chieftain Limited comes from the factory with Dunlop American Elite tires on it. On the short, straight, and stoplight-filled demo rides, I couldn't tell much difference between the tires, but the bikes handled fairly similarly to each other. Fairly similarly, the big difference is the fork-mounted fairing on the Chieftains. Now, the Chieftain is a big bike like the Challenger, weighs in at 830 pounds fully fueled, just 10 pounds lighter than the Challenger. But it feels bigger somehow, and no doubt a lot of that feeling comes from the Chieftain having that big fork-mounted fairing. The Chieftain Classic is 858 pounds fully fueled, so the Limited weighs a full 28 pounds less. That has to be weight savings credited to the redesign of the fairing and dropping two lights from the setup. Now, as I said in the Challenger video, floorboards are a pretty wonderful thing, and the Chieftain has those as well. It was a little bit different than the Challenger, though, because I kept having trouble getting my toe under the Chieftain's shift lever. It almost felt like it was too far forward, though I didn't experience a similar difficulty with the brake pedal. The left side of the Chieftain feels wider than the Challenger as well, and I couldn't pull my left leg in as close as I'd have liked to the bike. It was almost like the covers stick out farther, and they really got in my way. I didn't notice this when I rode the Chieftains in the past, so it could be a function of the new, larger displacement engine. What it meant was, on the demo ride, I found myself having to think about where to put my left foot, and that was definitely a distraction. The Chieftain definitely emanated more heat between my legs than the Challenger did, but that's to be expected. It's an air oil-cooled engine, and that back cylinder is out of the direct flow of air at low speeds or when sitting at a stoplight. I keep hammering that. And I rode the Chieftain it was after 11 a.m., and we were definitely sitting at stoplights more just because there was more traffic. You know, the dealership is located in a towny part of town, so there's a lot of traffic and a lot of stoplights. Well, for you in the video, I have conveniently trimmed out all that stoplight time. Maybe I'll make a video of just the stoplight time so we can see how long that lasted. It felt like forever during the rides, I can tell you that. Anyways, I apologize for getting off track. Even without the assist clutch, lever pull on the Chieftain's clutch was pleasant, and the transmission is fantastic as well, at least up to fourth gear. I managed to find the rev limiter in second gear on one stretch of road, probably somewhere around 6,500 RPM, and that's when I was riding the bike with the regular handlebar, not the mid-rise handlebar. On Friday, I rode the Limited with that mid-rise handlebar, which, if it was on the Scout, they'd have called it a mini ape, I guess. It put the grips slightly above the little flared sides on the fairing rather than slightly below them. Check out the Demo Fleet walkthrough video to see what I'm talking about there. Now, for this mid-rise handlebar, I did not care for it for three reasons, and I'll tell you what they are. First, my right hand went numb after about 10 minutes. If you watch the Scout Bobber video, you know this is something that happens to me sometimes after a couple hours on a regular bike, any regular bike. It depends on how long it's been since I visited the chiropractor sometimes. Getting the pins and needles just 10 minutes into a demo ride is absolutely not a good sign for me. On a bike with handlebars that don't aggravate me, stopping for gas is usually all it takes to get rid of that numb feeling, and that's about how often I need to do it, every couple of hours. If I had to set the cruise control, and yes, the Chieftain Limited has cruise control, every 10 minutes to flex and flap my hand, well, that would get old pretty quick. Not to mention inconvenient. Second ding is the high handlebar flexes a lot. I guess it's because they're so long, so there's just more opportunity for flex in the metal, but I could actually feel them moving as I accelerated and braked, a really disconcerting thing to experience. It reminded me a lot of the old BMW K1100 bikes that had this stupid rubber-mounted handlebar. Yeah, I hated those things. And even though this mid-rise bar didn't feel like it was rubber-mounted, it had so much flex in it that it reminded me of those other bars. Now that brings me to the third ding on this mid-rise bar, vibration. Because they move around so much, they're far more susceptible to vibration than the regular handlebar was. As far as I'm concerned, that's 3 strikes, and I won't be modifying any of my future bikes, big bikes anyways, with tall handlebars. Maybe a Scout, but like I said, I didn't have the same problem with the Scout and the taller handlebar. The Limited that I rode with the standard handlebar was perfectly comfortable from the hands to the feet and right through the seat. No matter the handlebar, the mirrors are too close to the grips for my taste, and I had to wear different gloves on Saturday than I wore on Friday because my Friday gloves, made by Revit, have this hard plastic plate to protect the knuckles. The result of how short the mirror stalks are on these bikes and those gloves meant that I had to be precise on how I placed and moved my hands, because otherwise that knuckle plate banged on the mirror and restricted my movement. I don't think it quite rose to the level of being a safety hazard, but it was definitely a distraction to me while riding. And I don't care who you are, distraction is a safety hazard in all respects of riding a motorcycle. Now, like with the Challenger, I didn't mess with the Ride Command infotainment system on the Chieftain Limited. It's got this built-in everything system, and you might as well have been in a car. So I can't speak to the quality or accuracy of the navigation system because I didn't use it. Same thing with the radio. I don't understand the appeal of having a radio built into your motorcycle. I just don't get it. I don't want to listen to a loud-ass radio system going down the highway and listen to some idiot shock jock or a radio commercial at 100 decibels so that, you know, the people sitting at the red light with me can check out my cool radio or my choice in classic rock or country music. I just don't get it. So one of the differences between the base models and the higher end models like the Dark Horse and the Limited is the inclusion of navigation. I'm not sure having an onboard GPS is worth part of a $6,000 upcharge, but I'm used to using aftermarket GPS units from Garmin and Beeline and TomTom and other companies. At any rate, all I needed to do with the Ride Command system was get the bike in standard mode. These bikes have three riding modes. They use rain, which is sometimes called touring mode, so that you don't feel like a sissy, I guess, by having to put your bike in rain mode. And then they have standard and sport mode. All 3 modes deliver the bike's full power. The difference is how the throttle reacts. In sport mode, you get all the throttle right away, and hopefully your hand isn't twitchy and you don't have one of those diseases that makes your hand shake. In rain mode, the bike's computer slows down the throttle response, theoretically to keep you from crashing because you got on the gas a little too hard when the traction wasn't very good. A lot of people on these demo rides immediately put the bike into sport mode, which is fine, but I'm not having a dick measuring contest and I'm not trying to impress anybody. I just want to check out the bike. So I put my bike in standard mode. The Chieftain's also available with cruise control. As a matter of fact, it's standard, I guess. I didn't try that out, but my FTR has cruise control. I figure they work the same. The one on my FTR works great. I have no reason to believe that the one on the Challenger or the Chieftain wouldn't work just as great. I like the Chieftain a lot. I still do. But it's a handful at low speed or when trying to make a U-turn like we had to do at the end of the demo ride. Given the choice between a fork-mounted fairing and a frame-mounted one, I might have to choose the Challenger over the Chieftain, especially if I ever expected to ride the bike around town and not just on long trips. The Challenger and the Chieftain have the same base model price, and the Dark Horse and limited variants are similarly priced. Despite my general dislike of matte finishes on motorcycles, I did like the white smoke matte finish on the Challenger Dark Horse I rode. But if it ever came down to it, I probably would choose the Challenger over the Chieftain, which hurts me a little bit to say, because the Chieftain will always hold a special place in my heart as the bike which attracted me to the resurrected Indian brand in the first place back in 2014. Now, I think that's about going to do it for the Chieftain Limited video. Thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe, and comment. Check out the other videos in this little series, the demo fleet video and the 2 other demo ride videos. And if you have any questions, post them. I'll do my best to answer the questions. Do me a favor and check out my podcast. It's called Chasing the Horizon, and it's all about the motorcycle industry and the people who create the things we ride and use. You can find it at chasingthehorizon.us. In the meantime, I'll see you out there somewhere on the road. Or off it. Ride safe.